go for a bit before we start really.
And we're
All
there,
right,
brother.
we got. I'm not sure. It'll be interesting. I'm gonna have to see it when I see people start to show up. Kind of monitoring the whole screen. It'll be fun.
I'll keep an eye on comments for you.
Yeah. Well, this. Have you ever used StreamYard? It's actually really cool
Yes,
because there's a whole big section over here. I love it.
it's
Um,
awesome. It's
all right,
great.
so let me close that so nobody's going to be pinging me during it. Excellent. Fun stuff. Ooh,
Oh
two
man,
whole
I'm
people.
excited.
Unless that's us. We're the two.
No, I'm sure more people are showing up.
Excellent. All right. Put that over there. Gentle. Yeah, it was
The
definitely.
tower of sketch cards.
Oh, I know.
It's great,
These.
man.
So
I love it.
actually, none of these over here, with the exception of these two, are sketch cards. These are all regular cards. A lot of them are actually Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, etc. So we will see.
I'm glad you're doing this channel, man, because like
Yeah,
I don't know anybody else who has the kind of knowledge about sketch cards than you do. I'm excited for this, man. This is good.
yeah, it should be fun, even if we only have one viewer, which is me. So there we go. The other good thing is these get recorded. So hey, Better Call Bud, what's going on?
Hey, buddy.
If we only have one or two, we'll just start talking. And, it's there. So yeah, I also thought about some sort of a green screen just to like hide the chaos behind me because it is just
No, that's
it's
all
just
your ethos right there.
I
That's all of your credibility right there behind you.
I mean I can I've tried blurring before and that just looks awful because it looks like I've got a shimmer
No, no,
around me.
no.
So
It looks good, man. It's authentic.
yeah, it's authentic. Oh my lord.
Oh
All right.
man.
Well, why don't we just get started? If people join, that's great. So yeah, welcome to That's So Sketchy, the highly researched name for this show. We had a panel of hundreds, right, discussing this. We
Yes,
came up with some
yes, we did.
interesting alternatives for sure.
I was the problem child the whole time. I took it way too literally, and now I very much love the name. It was funny, Matt. I showed Emily the name after I made my concern. I was like, "Yeah, but you're not sketchy, and you're like good about sketch cards. You're like an authentic, source." And Emily, like, I told her the title, and she was like, "Oh, that's really funny." And I was like, "Okay, I've lost all credibility here. I'm done." And now I like it.
But have a little fun with it. And like I said,
It's awesome.
part of it is if my kids ever find this channel and they cringe at the name, then I've succeeded in life. So
That's it.
that
That's
that's
it.
pretty much my purpose as a father, is to do everything possible to make them cringe. So we talked about this a little bit, but the whole goal here is to, like you said, just to share sort of that passion and love for sketch cards. And there aren't, to your point, you're right. There aren't a lot of people who are only focusing on this. I think it comes up in a lot of discussions. I know Justin on his channel sketches always come in where they're doing polls, and there's definitely a lot of love for it. But I think having a discussion that's solely focused on sketch cards, could be a lot of fun. And most of my focus will be Marvel, but I may occasionally, take a side venture. I am also I wouldn't even call it closet, a Lord of the Rings sketch collector. I've got a couple of those, to say the least. So that could be fun some days.
Hey,
Um,
if you ever
but
want to
one
see
of the
some
things,
Mando sketches, I'm down
there
too.
you, there you
I'm
go.
down to
And
share.
I have right here. I have my one Star Wars sketch that I still have that you know
Oh,
about. So maybe I'll show that as well. Um,
please.
I think we could do a whole episode on what I'm about to say, but I'll just touch on it briefly, which is that one of the reasons this took me so long to decide to do is that, and a lot of people have discussed this, and it is unfortunate, but you know this very well too. When you are a collector of something very specific, for better or for worse, that knowledge is a double edged sword, right? And people know that. It's good in that it can open up doors for you, but you and I have both seen the other side where once people know, and not a lot of people, but there are some people when they know it, they'll use that knowledge against you, whether it's to hold out a card for something you might not want to trade, to raise the prices. But after thinking about it long enough, I think I've decided that that's such a small subset of the community that I didn't want to let them keep me from doing this and having some fun. So I will definitely over time be sharing a lot, if not all of my collection. It's going to take a while for sure, but that's the
Wow.
fun. I don't want to do 3 episodes and be done, right? Just tear through all of them. Spread out the love.
You'll be on for like 8 years, Matt. You're fine.
And and the idea is, I'm going to do it slowly. I will definitely reveal over time who my favorites are. In fact, for the geek in you, I don't want to share the screen, but I'm going to do this. If somebody's real ambitious, they could freeze frame this and see. But you can see I've got, oh, there it is. These charts that show, those blue charts are characters and artists that I collect and how many I have of each, and sort of my top ranking of each. And I love data, so this will be as much geeking out about the art of collecting as it will be specifically about sketch cards. Put that in the screen right there just to get ready for our first discussion. I
Okay,
think
wait
over
a second.
time.
Wait a second. There's too much to digest. A, I love you for doing this, and I originally started my channel before the podcast, before anything, and it was Sketch Card Hive, and I did APs, and I would have mail days, and that's how I met a lot of the artists. That's how I started talking to you guys, and I am such a huge. My favorite thing in Marvel card hobby, my favorite thing in non-sport hobby, is sketch cards, hands down. I'm a Silver Surfer guy, and then right after it's sketch cards. However, I've never, my collection. I have like 20 outside of Surfer that I've kept because I love them, and I wish I had more because there's so many that I would love to collect and buy. But it's a very hard collection to. And it's not about money. It's more about it's a very hard collection to become very knowledgeable about because you have to understand artist techniques. You have to understand the card stock. You have to understand the materials they use. It's quite a lot of work to do it correctly. And that's what's always been so amazing to me about what you can do and what a few friends of ours can do as well. Because it's very much like to do it correctly. You really have to. It has to be second nature. You know what I mean? I know you have the talent. It's the drinking game of drinking games, where I can show you any sketch card and you'll know the artist. So it's absolutely fantastic in that way. But I'm really happy you've been doing this, man. I've been a huge supporter of you doing this since the dawn of time, since you mentioned this stuff, and like you've always been my resource, and I think it'd be good for people. And I'm the same way with the Surfer collection. A lot of people, it's going to get bad down the line. It's already bad, and I'm pretty vocal about who I collect, and there's not a lot of secrecy there, but there is that risk and that double edged sword. But I think you're so like I don't know all your pieces, but I know like the really good stuff, and like you got nothing to worry about. Even if somebody had something, they'd be hard pressed not to find something that would rock their socks off if you really wanted it. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just where your collection is. So to share and be a resource for people, I think if anybody can do it, it can be you. So I'm excited.
Thanks. No, and you know what? In some ways, if this did put a little pressure, I could use some help in slowing down the collecting too, because I am not immune to that rabbit hole of, you start out and you have one, and 10 years later, oh, what happened?
Yeah.
That happens, right? So yeah, madness to say the least.
It
So
is
yeah, in
madness.
in some of these, I'll focus on a set. In some, I'll focus on an artist. said, in some I'll focus on um, character, and in some it'll be just a mail day or mail week in that case. So yeah, why don't we just we'll start talking, and I'd
Let's
love to
do it.
hear from
I'm
people,
ready.
because I've got some ideas in my head about how to talk about these, and show my appreciation. But once we do this, people can say, "Oh, that was good, that wasn't." So let's give it a roll. So first one I'm going to focus on is I picked a set where I don't have a ton. I think I only have 12 or so from Marvel Weekly. It wasn't a set I collected when it came out, because it was one of those. You'll find for me that if it's not a guaranteed sketch, I go in pretty lightly, and I usually only collect in the aftermarket or in APs, just because it's not really worth it for me to take the risk that, I'll get a case of this and I'll trade, because that doesn't always pan out the way you want it to. So this is
It's true.
Marvel Weekly. First one is David Hindelang is the artist, and this is his Omega
Could I
Red.
see it?
I
Could I see it on the big screen?
Oh,
Like, could I
yes,
see?
thank you for a reminder. Let's drag
Yeah.
this, make him the star of the
Oh,
show. There
sick.
you go. Hide
Awesome.
me in the background where I belong. Um, so David. So I have 11 total cards from David. This is one of them. I know David's done a ton of sets. I have cards of his from Ages, X-Men Metal, Spider-Man Metal, Vibranium, Punisher, Runaways, and Flare Marvel. So David has done lots of sets. I'm sure he's done
Wow.
even more than the 8 I just listed. He is very prolific. I know there's at least one person in MCCW who collects him, because I've seen his name come up, for people who are looking for this guy who's looking for his sketches. So who knows? Maybe I'll start to get hey, Matt, I saw you had this, but that's okay. That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's
I
gonna be the tip
also
of the iceberg, Matt.
Exactly. Um, I did also, this Omega Red, you're going to see a few of him in this. Of the 12, I think 3 are Omega. When Jonathan made his switch to focus less on the sketches and more on the base cards, I actually picked up a bunch of his Omega Red. So that's where this one came from.
Oh,
And
interesting.
one of the things I really like about David's art in particular, is, first of all, and you're going to have to tell me if my little pointer here is good or just annoying.
I actually
First of
like
all,
it because the light catches it.
yeah, right. There you go. It's all shiny. It's my letter opener, in
It's
case anyone
silver,
was wondering.
whenever I'm like, okay.
Exactly. Uh, there you go. Get the werewolves out of here. Um, he does two different things with shading in his color, which I really like. He uses the sort of ink based markers where you can see he's got the depth, so he's got the darker red used in the shading, but he also uses here some cross hatching and the black to do it. So it's a nice mix there. Another thing, I don't know if you can really see it here, but on a scan you can. Up here in the hair, you can actually see a lot of the underlying pencil work that he laid down
Oh,
for the framework before he did the inks and the colors. And it's interesting. Some people really don't like that. I actually think it's great.
really?
I think it tells the story of how these artists build the cards from the ground up. And it shows that, not that this is any more real or authentic than others, but just to me, I think it just tells a story, which is kind
I
of
mean,
cool.
it's also like thought process, right? Like I mean, they're sketch cards. You know what I mean? Like they're meant to be, pun intended, sketchy, right? They're meant to have the kind of blue line. They're meant to have that kind of like thought process in them because they're not the final product. They are the storytelling, they are the creation from the artists at that point in time. And they just kind of have, I don't know, man, progress pieces. I think progress pieces are way cooler than people give them credit for. You know? I don't know. I love that stuff.
Hey, Southern, welcome. So
Ew.
yeah, I really like David's work. I'm going to try to get my hand in and out as quick as possible, because, my God, it's funny. If you look at your hands in light, you're like, oh, that's not so bad. But when you see it under a close-up camera, it's like, oh my God, what is that hideousness? Right? Show my
Remember
the
that from
self-consciousness at work here.
no,
So
my
this one,
favorite
so
my favorite things is, yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was just
No,
gonna
I'm not.
say I was just laughing at the hand model comment. It's very true. Very, very true.
Um, I should test you on all of these. Who do you think this one is?
Oh,
Didn't tell you I was
no.
going to put you on
I
the
am
spot here.
I'm miserable.
How about
It's
the
not
character? You can
rich.
name the character.
Yeah, Dark Phoenix, done.
There you go.
Well, actually, you know
So
what?
this,
So, like, what's the difference between green and red for Phoenix?
so I think you're right. Keep in mind my comics. I've got a gap in my comics knowledge, but my
Right, right.
understanding is green is more traditionally Jean as Phoenix when she's sort of in control, and red is more of the
Ah,
dark Phoenix where Phoenix has more of the control. But if I'm wrong, please somebody
I like
here
that. I like that.
can,
I'm
can
with
tell
it.
me.
If it's not
It's
right, it
it's
should
what
be.
it's what's in my head at least, yes. But she also has just both as Jean and Phoenix. She must have at least 30 different costumes over the years, so plenty to
Yeah.
choose from. Ernest Romero is the artist on this one. Ernest, I'm going to use this term only because I'm going to get in trouble with it, I'm sure. So I only have six total from Ernest, and they're all from different sets. So we've got this one, Masterpieces 18, Annual 21, Thor Ragnarok, Punisher, and Premiere 2019. So Ernest has also been around quite a bit. In one of them, I think in MM18, he's got this great series of cards where it's almost all of the, you've probably seen them, almost all of the X-Men, and they're always in front of a Sentinel. And
That's
there was a point,
his.
yes,
That's a
and
good
somebody
those are
had a whole
good.
set of them and was selling
Yes.
them at one point. Yeah, so those are pretty cool. Um, and what I really like about this, and I think, no surprise here, great use of the shading here. The hair, the way he did it with the black and the different shades of red adds that sort of fire effect, as well as the background. And this is a great example of how a background doesn't have to be super detailed to really add
Right.
to it, right? I mean, that's a simple color sort of explosion with the fire and does a great job of adding that level of depth there. So,
And it pulls her from the background too. So there's a nice little
yep,
depth there. You know what I mean? Yeah, she
definitely
doesn't get
makes it
lost
pop.
in
Yep.
there or anything like that. Very nice.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. All right. Moving right along. All right. Nice
I like
Wolverine.
this one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Age of Apocalypse Wolverine, right?
So no. So this one, so this is very interesting on Wolverine. So this one is from the Onslaught storyline. So in Age of Apocalypse, well, you can't tell here, but in one of them, he's missing one of his claws. He's got the stump,
Right.
but it's
He's
also
got the
a different
Captain
color
Hook thing.
costume. Yeah, I think the blue one, again, I'm 90-ish% sure, is from the Onslaught storyline. And the other way you can tell is then he was much more feral, like they made his beard grow and he was just much
No, this
hairier
yeah.
overall. You
Yeah.
know,
That's
hairy
great.
Canadians.
Those hairy Canadians, man. I thought it was just hairy Cubans, but apparently it's hairy Canadians, so who knows.
So this artist is Ivan Rodriguez. So Ivan, I've got
I like Ivan.
15 total, um, which still doesn't put him in my top 50 by any stretch. So Ivan, I've got cards from. This could get annoying, so I'd love people to
No,
tell
this
me,
is
tell me
awesome. This is
things.
great because this just puts in my head how many episodes you could do of doing like a top 10 from my top, like, you know what I mean? Like my top 100 artists, or like who are like the most artists I have in my collection. Like that kind of stuff would be really cool to see in a future video.
Yep.
So, no, I like
So
this.
for other Ivan ones, so most of mine are from MM16. I collected him heavy on that set, but I've also got
Oh,
ones from Masterpieces 20, Premiere 17 and 19, and one of my favorite stealth sets for sketch cards, which is Legendary 3D. So you've heard me talk about that one
you
before.
dirty dogs. You know what I mean? Like you guys, bro. People don't even
That
know.
one,
That's such a
I mean,
so good.
I'm looking forward to talking about that set when that one comes
That's a good
because
set.
it was so fun. It was for the longest time. It was a guaranteed sketch. It was so cheap. I'm just going to geek out over that one. That's the episode for sure.
Well,
Um,
UD, I was speaking to Upper Deck about that set specifically because I was trying to grab a promo Silver Surfer card, not a sketch, but it was like a versus system card that they gave out during the tournaments because they still have them.
oh, wow.
And I was trying to grab one. Yeah, I had no idea. So this was I had to contact someone in the Philippines to get it.
Oh,
to get
wow.
this card. Yeah. So they were talking to me and they were saying, yeah, I was like, man, why don't you guys like try to bridge the gap more? I was like, well, we tried, we did it with sketches, but it didn't work out so well. The product didn't sell. And in my head, I was like, you guys killed that 3D. And he didn't, he was surprised that I remembered that was the 3D one, but I was like, dude, those sketches were badass, man. Those were great. Really good pieces.
Those were stealth, some of the best sketches.
Yeah.
And like I
Good
said,
stuff.
you could still get them for a long time after other sets were sold out. Nobody really knew about them. So,
No, you guys taught me that. I had no idea. Surfer's not in it, so luckily I got lucky. But
not in for sketches,
yeah,
but he was definitely in some of the retail sets though. So no, there were close to there
not
were
in
at least
3D.
30 of those, not in 3D, but there were other legendary sets, right?
Legendary sets everywhere, but the 3D ones with
Yeah,
the sketch cards, no.
yeah. We'll have to peek through
Unless
some
you
of
find
mine.
one. If you find one, then I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
happy to be
surprised.
wrong. You
What I
can
was going to
teach
say is
me.
I'm surprised he wasn't hidden in any of the affinity sets, but the lenticulars that they did. But I'm
No,
sure
I didn't see
those were
any. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. If someone finds one and wants to sell it to me, that'd be lovely. Thank you.
the other problem. The other problem with the your collecting is so detailed. You have to check the backs of every card too, right?
I don't even want to talk about that. Don't tell me that shit.
Exactly.
Dude,
Whenever people
I'm
say that I'm sick for my sketch cards, I'm like, well, at least I don't look at the back of the cards.
dude, I have a small collection of Silver Surfer cards that is just where it's referenced in text his name.
That's right. Oh my God, you went even deeper down the rabbit hole. That's right. Forgot about that.
And you know who
Would have
taught
been
me to do that? That was Jordan. That was that sick mother fudger there. That guy taught me that one, and I was like, "Geez, I didn't even think about that."
so just to wrap up Ivan here, what I really like about this is a pretty badass card, and it doesn't even show his claws. And I think it's a great
Yeah,
example of how just working on the character itself, and again, nothing crazy on the background, right? Little trees and bushes there, just really makes that depth pop right out at you. And great use of just shading and inks on this one. So,
but I and also for that piece, like composition wise, because his body's kind of curled, and his face is the central focus of that. Like it's just a good composition, man. I don't know. I do like that. This is
yep,
mayonnaise and bread all day.
yep,
Mayonnaise and bread.
there you go. And what's really interesting about these is so this is two from the exact same set, um, but you can see what the difference is, which is the Danny is the pack inserted, and you can see up here that Omega Red's an artist proof. And what's so interesting to me about Jason, so Mayonnaise and Bread, aka Jason Keith Phillips.
Jason.
So first of all, for what I own of Jason, so I own 18 pieces from Jason. However, a lot of them are multi sketch cards, right? 4 cards, 6 card puzzles.
Kills
So
those. Kills those.
it depends how you count them, right? So if I count a 6 card sketch puzzle as one, I only have 18. But as far as individual cards from Jason, I actually have 50. So it just shows that I actually bugged you about this a long time ago, and some others. I'm like, how do I count how many I have? Should a puzzle be one or the individual pieces? So typically I count it as one, but no surprise on my spreadsheet, I track both because why not? It's a
See,
number.
because you're sick. You're sick like I am. That's good that we have the same disease though. Like, and you know
Hey,
what's
feel
funny? I
better.
don't feel
You're
like
welcome.
I'm so glad Doom is here. Doom is such a good dude. Um, but like, you know what? I have to say, Jason's one of my favorites. Like, I just feel like he does such interesting work. And it's funny. Um, he had sketches in MM07 or '08,
Yeah,
and
he's
they're
been
only
around
blue
for a
line.
long time.
Yeah.
Yep.
But they have the same structural and the skeletal and the style of the characters. It has the weird heads, and like I saw the surfer he did. I tried to track it down because it was like so I love ghost and Halloween shit. Love supernatural stuff. My whole life I've always loved that stuff. So I always wanted to see like a cool surfer supernatural thing. And Jason like kind of nailed it in one, and I was like, "This is the best." I tried looking for the card, never found it, but I just love his whole like I just like his style. He's one of like when I think of like the most unique sketch card artists out there, Jason's at the top of the list for me. Like he's a
He
major
does great
player.
work. And what I love about this particular set and these two cards is you see two similar styles applied very differently, which is the
Yeah.
spatter effect. So on the Danny, which was the pack inserted, he did it, but I mean, just look how he used multicolored dots. He used red and blue dots that just sort of overlay and add this interesting look to the characters. Whereas on Omega Red, it's almost so fine that the camera can't catch it. But down here, he used the more traditional, like white paint on the toothbrush spatter effect. So you get it really heavy down here at the bottom and a little bit light up here at the top. But it really
It's cool.
adds just some great depth and effect to it. I mean, they're two. It's his is so unique you can tell it's the same artist, but I think if you didn't know him, you might be like, no, these are two totally different approaches. And I love that he did the
No,
same
these are different
sort
approaches
of
for
drawing
sure.
at the same
Yeah.
set. Yeah. So it just
Yeah.
adds a lot of fun
I
there.
dig it,
So and
man. I think it's a
of course
lot of fun.
Danny,
Very stylistic.
so for
Danny's
people who
cool.
don't know, Danny Moonstar is one of those characters that I sort of went gaga over. I went on quite an AP journey. In fact, I have a recent AP to show a little later. Little sneak preview for everyone. Norrin's already seen it. He's going to try not to laugh. So
Hard. I'm gonna try to be really.
this one you might. This is another very distinct artist who has a
Right.
very distinct
It's
style.
it's first name starts with an F, last name starts with a Q. Right?
Nope, no, no, that's all right.
No, it's
It's
not. It's okay.
Jonathan
I'm a
Rupert.
failure. Oh, I'm an
So
idiot.
yeah,
There we go. That's cool.
and again, another Omega Red, seeing a trend here. Um, this one again, just look at this again. You're right. The black background looks really great on this, because
Sick.
especially for a card like this, really makes it pop. And it's funny. I'm hovering over it with my mouse, like everyone can see it, and I know they can't, so I got to go back to my pointer. Um, Again, just look at the little crosshatch details that he adds in these. It's wild the level of micro detail he puts in there. And there are quite a few people who do that. And I wonder, as they get older, some of them might joke about their eyesight. Tony Pern is another one who does that micro detail. Lack limb, they go hard on some of these, but it really makes such a difference in the card when you see it. Excuse me. So yeah, I absolutely adore this one. You know,
I think it's
if I
great. It reminds me of the images used for Capcom versus X-Men back in the day.
oh,
Remember? Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So I always like it feels it could be like I could see this style like anime type of style type of thing. I don't know. It has that kind of like muted color type of thing, which I like a lot.
yeah,
I don't know.
it's this is just a great card. It really pops out in person, and I mean, what's nice is the camera catches most of that, which is great.
Yeah.
All right, so the next four are all from the same artist. I'll go two at a time here, I guess. So this is from Luke Welch. So these are all APs. I commissioned four APs from him. And for Luke, I have, so Jonathan, just to jump back, Jonathan, I've got seven total from him and a couple other sets. Luke, I actually own. You can tell I definitely like Luke. Most are APs too. I've got 22 total from Luke, including Luke's, I think, been around since 18 or 19. So I've got him on Black Diamond, X-Men Metal, Black Panther, Punisher, Premiere 19, and supposedly Allure. But I can't possibly have any APs ahead of time because that would be bad. So let's just say they're in the pipeline. So looking forward to them. And I'm looking forward to that set. Hopefully, it's one of the next sets because I think it's got a lot of potential. Um, so, Luke, I went with some sort of Bronze Age characters that I really liked, and then a little twist in there. So, Dazzler, I wanted a Dazzler, but I wanted one that wasn't that one everybody knows, which is Disco Dazzler, right? She's sort of the traditional
Hmm.
one in the shiny costume with the rollerblades, and I've got quite a few. So this particular version was from when she don't know too much about the character. I'm geeking myself out here. Right when she finished being a professional singer and turned to be a full time hero, this was the costume she adopted. So just
This
adding
is
a little
by
variety there.
far this is by far my favorite costume of her, and I've never seen her in this. And I have to say, like, I'm kind of obsessed with that sketch card. I love it.
Yeah. There's actually later on, there's a slight variation of this sort of talk about, at the time where the only difference is they took out her midriff. The costume, so you can actually see her stomach. Yeah, of course, right? Because it's Marvel, it's the '80s. What can you do?
What do
Um,
you do?
that's the '80s happened. What can you say? It was a hell of a drug.
So I have a question
Um,
for you, Matt. I got a
Absolutely.
good question for you. Pupils or no pupils? Because I am a wide eye kind of gal. Like that shit is all that for me is that's the way to do it.
It to me, it strongly depends on the character, right? And I think the important thing is if you're going to do the white eye, because the white eye is typically used to indicate their powers is happening, right? So I think the
That's a good
key
one.
is you have to be able to see, like right here, she's using her power. So when I see that, I don't mind the white eye. But if it was just a portrait where a face where you couldn't see anything else and it was all white eye, yeah, I'd probably have an issue with that. So
See, but that's the difference, right? That's like the right answer. That's like the badass answer right there. I love that so much. And I love how he indicated her powers on there too. Like seeing the diamonds float up. I just think that's so cool.
yeah, I'm also using the technology. I just noticed Better Call Bud's comment from before, so I'm just pulling that up, and this is my first time using that, so now I know I can do that, and then it goes away. That's awesome. So I'm going to take advantage of that. That's pretty
That's
cool.
cool.
Now, do you know this guy on the other side? I was going to say right, but I don't know how it's displaying to you.
It's definitely on my right. I actually don't know who this character is, but I've seen this character before, so it's familiar to me. But I actually don't know the name.
Yep. So his name is Mimic. So Mimic to me is, again, I'm going to want to hear if people think this is just oversharing, but I actually loved Mimic when I was reading comics in the '80s. And it's because I first saw him on an old issue of X-Men that was hanging up on the wall in the comic shop I used to go to when I was a kid, when I was probably 11 or 12. And it was X-Men 27, which was actually wasn't his first appearance; it was his second appearance. But he was there. He's this really cool pose, and he sort of had the wings, and he looked like a bad guy on the cover. They sort of played him both ways, and that was the first old back issue I ever bought. I want to say at the time, now keep in mind, I was like a 12-year-old kid who had a paper route. This is going to age myself here. This is how I made my money. I delivered the local newspaper, and I want
Wow,
to
that's
say it was
sick.
like 30 or 35 bucks. It wasn't even then. I mean, that was expensive for me, and it wasn't like a super great copy, but it wasn't trash either. But that was the first back issue I bought, which ultimately led me. By the time I was 16, I had every issue of X Men, including number one. I sold them all right when I went to college. Still one of the greatest regrets of my life because I look at what they are now and I can only imagine. But, you know, I had it. That was my moment in the sun. So what can you say? But yeah, Mimic's a cool character, and he's actually back now, and he has this interesting role in the current comics where he's sort of a backup to the what do they call those five? The five or whoever the mutants are that can resurrect everybody right now. Since he can duplicate powers, if one of them ever went down, he's sort of one of the backups, which is sort of interesting.
I
So
really
he's been,
love that. That's so cool. I did not know that. That's a
yeah,
really good interpretation of Mimic too.
it's been a lot of fun to actually start catching up on the new issues. I really jumped back in with the whole House of X, Powers of X a couple years ago, and really enjoyed
Yeah.
that. I even got into, I did some off branches there. I did the whole Immortal Hulk run. Oh, so good. But anyway, it's not going to go off on
Uh,
tangents. All right, so let's start with this one first. You know who that is? One of the New Mutants.
oh yeah, that's just 100%.
There you go.
That's Wolfbane. Yeah, yeah,
There
yeah,
you
yeah,
go.
yeah.
There you go.
That's
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. I got her. I got her. I
So
got her.
Wolfbane, another one where as a kid, New Mutants was my book. Um, she had the whole tortured Catholic thing going on, so I could relate to that as a
Very cool.
kid. Did that whole altar boy thing as a youth. Escaped
Oh wow.
unscathed. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. But I always enjoyed that character. It's an interesting take on the sentimental werewolf long, long before Twilight came and butchered it all. So, all right. So
You're not
now
a
the
fan of
other
Twilight? How dare you?
I know, right? The other character, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to get it wrong. So, who do you think that is?
Uh, okay. I've messed up on all of these so far, so
Yeah,
I'm not even gonna guess. Um, it's obviously not Rogue. It's not
correct. That's the trap.
Rogue. I knew I hence the trap. I knew it wasn't Rogue. It's not Static is not right, but I don't know. I actually don't know who it is. I like her look
This,
though. She looks very
yeah,
cool.
unless you're into the X books, she's had a pretty big role recently, but she was introduced by Bendis in like 2011, 2012, whenever the all new X-Men came out. Her name is Tempest, and she can control
Tempest.
time, and she had a pretty interesting arc in some of the recent X-Men ones. Um,
Tempest.
but this
That's
was
cool.
one where it's a character I didn't have. I've had this crazy goal for a while where my thought was, you know what, I want to have one of every mutant out there. And I made that statement. And then I started making a list of how many mutants there were. And I think when I finished the first pass, I had 2,200 mutants. So I was like, okay, that's a problem, right? So I said, all right, let's start doing many ones that only appeared in like one issue. So that got it down to like 1,800. Like, okay, we'll say I
No,
strive to all mutants, but
don't even.
no,
I don't even want to hear the difference between 1800 and what it was. Like, well, 1800 is easier. That's more manageable. I can do that.
it's more manageable, but it's still insane. So I'm trying to do ones where the characters have a more pivotal role. I do have a few exceptions of people who I thought were just so funny because they appeared and died in the same issue. So I had fun with some of those, but obviously, if you're getting APs, that's not a financially sustainable model to spend anywhere from 50 to 150 bucks
Uh,
for a character who only appeared once. So even I have my limits
it's a
there.
badass idea, though. Like, it's a very badass idea.
Yeah.
And, like, you're
Um,
probably. Can I take a guess, percentage wise, how close you are?
sure.
Oh, that's a good one. All right. I'm going to say you are 65% there.
No, I'm about a third of the way there. Yeah. Yeah. So
That's
I
crazy.
would
Man.
say, so it is interesting though, because like I said, I showed you a peek of this, which is my spreadsheet of every character and all that. I recently crossed the, not just mutants, but in terms of individual Marvel characters, I just crossed the 1,000 character mark. So I have 1,000 unique characters on sketch cards, which is kind of cool. But again, only about, I want to say about 600 of those roughly are mutants. So plenty of weirdo non mutants in there. Exactly. Don't even follow that thought through.
I don't know how
Um,
you do it. You're an
right.
animal.
I've just been
Yeah.
doing it for 10 years. It's just slowly pecking at it over time. This guy, Ghost Rider, Mason Easley. Um,
Mm.
what's interesting to me about this one, oh, so Mason. All right, one of my notes on Mason. Sorry, 14 sketch cards from Mason, Thor Ragnarok Annual 16, Marvel 75th, Divas 2, Premiere 19, Masterpieces 16. You can tell I didn't put these in any order. So he's been around since at least, I think the oldest one in there was Marvel 75th, which was 2015, I believe.
2014.
Or, there you go. So he's been doing it almost 9 years now at least. If I, he might have some of the ones I don't have. So he's been in the game for a long time, still putting out quality work. And to me, that's always the most impressive thing, right? Is not that you're just sticking around, but you're sticking around and you're making good cards. You're not like mailing it in. Me, if I've first of all, I've never lasted 9 years in my career at a single job. So I could definitely see mailing it in towards the end. So it's great to see that he still puts it in. I love, you get the leather jacket with the spikes here. And what I like about this, and it's just an interesting sort of way to think about how this works. So, what is Ghost Rider, right? He's this magical skull that somehow talks without any sort of tendon. So when you look at it from the side, it's sort of got that. It almost looks like a ventriloquist dummy, right? But you sort of wonder, okay, how would the jaw work on a magical skeleton anyways? Would it go up and down just like on a hinge like there were tendons, or would it be sort of like this and just go up and down like that? And it's
Peds
sort of
dispenser type of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think this is a valid interpretation of it. I'm like, all right, that's an interesting take, right? It doesn't have to
It's a
be,
good
or
profile though. It's a good
yeah,
profile because between the blue and the it looks like it glows because of that blue and red and orange, and I do think it's really fun. And the cross hatching and the skull's really cool. I like it, man. I dig it.
if I turn it, yeah, if you turn down the light a little bit, it gets a little bit, a little bit. You can
It
see a
looks
little bit
good
more.
to me, man. Ghost Rider is
Yeah,
a good character, man.
yeah. It's another one also where I think I picked up quite a bunch of them in a set liquidation someone did. All right, and then this one.
You're
So
welcome.
yeah,
You're
right.
welcome. I want everyone to hear this. This is from me to Matt. He paid for it,
Yeah.
but I sold it to him. He's welcomed because that's one of the
Do you
badass magics I've ever seen.
do you remember the artist's name?
Yes,
Aha.
I actually love this artist. Um, Vince, no. Uh, damn it. You dog. You dirty dog. No, I
It's
don't remember his last name.
Vincenzo Riccadelli.
Vincenzo.
Sorry,
Vincenzo.
Riccardi.
That's right. He's
Vincenzo
Italian.
Riccardi.
I remember this. I remember
Which
this.
it,
If you go to my
which
Instagram, you can see me doing the mail call of this,
there
which
you
is
go.
great.
There's also an artist who signs as Vinz, Vinz, who is Vince L. Tabans. So I definitely have to struggle not to mix those two up. First world
It's such
problems,
a
right?
badass
Not
sketch.
mixing up my two Vin. Yeah, no. I mean, there's so much to like about this. You've got the color palette he used in the background with the flames, the white, the yellow, the red, the black, the horns, great touch. And then another one like you don't see on a lot of these. You've got the demonic tail right there, which is so cool.
Yeah. I told him I wanted the demonic magic, but I wanted her in the blue and black. The blue, you know what I mean? Because I like that. I like that difference there. So I remember asking for that in the sword, of course. But I don't know. His style is awesome. He's never done a surfer because surfer's banned and he wouldn't do it. He did send me. He was very nice. He sent me a 5x7 of a surfer he did with the sketch cards actually. So I
Well,
have that here. It's not on a
can imagine
sketch
it
card.
would be great just because look at just the detail on the
It's killer,
arm, right? And
killer.
then if you think you would apply that to the entire Silver Surfer, which I got to say, uh, if anyone's seen a Silver Surfer sketch, he is a pain in the butt to do well, right? I mean, you're
Yeah.
talking basically a naked metal guy who doesn't have ears. I've got to remember that doesn't have
No
ears.
ears. No ears.
We've had this conversation before.
Jesus.
Um, and just to get the shading right and the other challenge with him is to try to come up with a unique pose because one thing there have been a lot of with surfers are statues, right? And I think there are so many statues. I think sometimes, and you know them all, so I think sometimes we've discussed if you see him in a certain pose, you're like, looks an awful lot like this statue, and you're literally like pointing at the statue you have. And
I know every
because
surfer.
and because you know, I think we have certain preconceptions of what a surfer is. I think those poses tend to get repeated, whether it's the hang 10 we've seen. I could think of the Eric Nielotowski's AP, who's got that, some of them just sort of bending down. So there's a lot of challenges with drawing a character like that. And I think Beginnings Volume 1 is going to be fascinating to see the different interpretations when they start doing them again.
It'll be fun. I mean, this card's beautiful. Her displaying her powers in that one is awesome. I mean, it's just such a great card. I always remember that card. Beautiful card.
Yep. And I would tell you that that's why I picked this set, but I'd be lying. I only had 12
You
and I
also
said you
got the
need
Jubilee from me, right?
Yep. And that is in, I can't remember what set that's in, but yes, those are the only two I
It's not. It
have.
was. It was Flare, Flare or something
Yeah,
like that.
Marvel, you're right. Yep. So next, I thought I would go into just a mail day. So some I got in the last 2 or 3 days, which is actually a pretty small. You know, I've been cutting back recently. I've only got two in the last couple days. So let's start with. I'll start with the regular sized one. So this is one I could not resist picking up because it's
Ah,
Loki
so
does karaoke. Come on. I mean,
I
just to
love
be able to
that.
say that. And this is an artist that I absolutely adore, who I fell in love with. Um, well, first of all, he did a lot of the recent Cryptozoic Middle Earth, and I've absolutely gone nuts on his stuff. But I believe MM20 was the first. No, no, he did. Marvel 80th was the first time I ran into him. It's Juan Mendez. And he has this wonderful cartoony style that is so lacking. Um, a little comment there from Mr. Warner. What did you miss? Where do we start, man? Where do we start?
Yeah, man. You got 47 minutes to catch up on.
Yeah, exactly. Or just in life in general. I mean, there's just where do we even go? I mean, come on.
So many hot topic issues we talked about.
Exactly. War in Ukraine. We really got into depth on
We
that.
solved all of it, by the way. But yeah, it was
Exactly.
very
World
fruitful
peace is more so.
discussions. That's right.
Um, Yeah, Southern Hype, I absolutely agree. So Juan Mendez does some absolutely beautiful, beautiful work. And he is probably one of those artists who I will do an episode just focusing on their work,
You should.
uh, because I
You
really
should.
get it. Um, and great comment here from Mark. Court Jester vibes. Yeah, you're right. I could totally see that. Gotta making jokes to spare his life in front of the court kind of thing.
You know what
Just the
also
wire.
reminds me of? Reminds me of Doug. I
Oh,
don't know
Doug.
why.
All right.
Doug, like
Uh,
like you remember Doug?
the weird kid, right? The
Nicktoons.
cartoon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I like just, and just the little details, right? Just that little antenna on the cordless mic. If you're of a certain age, you sort of remember that. Yeah, no, I'm of that age. But Juan's, we've talked about this in different places in the past. The fun cards, for some reason, just don't seem to be desired by Upper Deck and or Marvel. And
Mistake.
we've seen it in Who Gets Invited. We've seen it when certain people get all of their cards rejected. Um, Something Mr. Warner also knows about. I know. And just the whole, again, we could do a whole episode on just that whole lack of communication on, how, listen, if you're commissioning artists, you need to have this whole back and forth communication. Like, to me, if an artist does their work and sends it in and you reject everything, that is not a failure of the artist. That is the failure of the art director, who is responsible for managing the artist. If they
Yep.
don't have, if they know that certain things are a problem, and they're not saying, okay, do two or three, send them to me so we can sort of pre-approve your style, right? If that's not already done, that's a failure there. But I don't want to get on that. Again, that could be its own topic. We could do a call-in show on that one. But yeah, a lot of fun with
That
Juan
would actually be
Mendez
fun.
there. Um,
I think
and
it's
then
great.
we go sort of in the different direction on this next one. So um, I, for a long time, have been commissioning Danny Moonstar. So one of my favorite characters. I can't show a certain painting, but I will be able to at some point. Um, but a lot of times I took a very different approach to these APs, where all I would do to the artist is I'd say, "Hey, Amit, you want to do an AP?" I said, "Here's is sort of what I got. I'm only going to give you 4 words, and you do whatever comes to mind." And those 4 words are Danny Moonstar, comma Demon Bear, and I've gotten some amazing, amazing results, like far beyond anything my non-artistic brain could ever have come up with.
Some of them have
So
been crazy nice.
Oh yeah, and again, that might be one where I focus just on Danny sketches. So this one came in. So you and I were at HarrisCon last year,
Yep.
and I we got to meet. Guy walks up to the booth and introduces himself, and he's like, "Oh hey, Michael, I'm Expo." I'm like, "Oh my God, we love you," all this. And I had a bunch of sketches there, and he was going through them. I was trying to sell them, and I actually had one of his, and he flipped out. He loved it because he's like, "Oh my God, I never kept any of my males." That I drew because he mostly draws females, and I had a Thor. He's like, would you be willing to give this to me and I'll do you an AP of a character of your choice? And I'm like, sure, why not? So I
That's
told him, I
sick.
said,
Because how often do you get that
Danny,
opportunity?
no, exactly. So I said, Danny Moonstar Demon Bear. So, all right. So sure enough, time goes by. He's like, all right, I'm ready to work on your AP. And I think this is funny. And believe me, this is funny. This is not a critique at all, but you'll see why I think this is so funny. One of his comments was something along the lines of, do you want it normal or Axbone style? So if you know Axbone, you know what he means when he says that. So I am fairly sure I said normal. Um, and if this is normal, my eyes are just wondering what Axbone style would have been. So
Axbone's living a very different life from all of us.
yes. So he has, yes, very very busty women. So that was this is
This is
the
toned down.
this is the toned down version, or he lost that in translation and did the
Or
normal.
he
But
was like, normal? What? No, sorry,
it
that
makes
doesn't
me
work for
laugh.
here. Yeah.
But what I mean, even joking aside, there's just a lot to really like about this. Great comment here, right?
Yep, totally normal.
Exactly. But still, just a great pose, great composition. I
Yeah.
love the bow with the fiery arrow.
Yep.
Um, one of the other things, and a lot of artists have done it this way, and I'm not sure if it's an omission or I've never gone back to look. A lot of times there isn't a string shown. But my problem is when I think of a magic bow and arrow, and this will date me here, I actually don't think of Danny and her bow. I think of, again, with my age, I remember the old Dungeons and Dragons cartoon where you had Mark the Ranger who had a bow that was like that, and he had the string glowed there as well. So I think that's in my head. But regardless, that's
Mm.
not. I'm not going to kick it out of bed for eating crackers, as the old saying goes. And I love the bear, And another thing I
Uh,
want to do is, though, I feel like I've seen that pose before with the bear to the point where it's very similar, and to the point where if I do see it, I want to see if I like Google like angry bear, if that comes
oh
up
yeah.
as sort of a reference. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, all jokes aside, I think this is great. If you know Axbone, this is a perfect example of his work, and
But I
really
will say
just
this, like Axbone's old school because he understands that with these 5x7s, you
yep,
draw the character inside the square in the middle. So when you
Yep.
know what I mean, like you try to get the focus there, and then everything else is plus. Like it's not going to be cut or anything like that, but he still understands that the main focus of the show should be in the middle of the card,
Right.
not at the edges. Like I've seen other people do it, and it doesn't work.
And that's a great point. So this is an oversized card. So this is, what it looks like on the back. And what you can see on the front is, if you notice, you've got these guidelines up here. So these cross hatches up here are where the card would be cut. So if it was a traditional card that was sent in and needed to be returned, Marvel would cut it. This is where it would stop on the top. So that would be the top. The border would be cut here and again on each side. So you see that it's really this interior area. And early on in Rittenhouse, you did see a lot of examples where artists didn't realize they were going to be cut and they did
Yeah,
full work and then they got cut and just they lost out on a lot of that extra effort they put in, which is a crime. Um,
it really
and I think
is.
a lot of times when you see a card that goes right to the edge and you almost feel like it could be part of a puzzle, I think in a lot of times it's because they did the full size piece, and it when you see it cut, it really does look like something's missing because literally it was just
Something
completely cut
technically
off.
is. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Um, so we've got those two. I pulled out an older one just because he's been talked about in the group. A little fun mode there, and also to show, over time, I think you're going to see that there's such a wide variety of sketch cards out there in different sizes, right? So the so normal sketch cards are 2.5 by 3.5. The uncut Rittenhouse were 4 by 5. This is an oversized card from Marvel 80th, which is, I believe, 3.5 by 5 inches.
Hmm.
And then in Premiere, you had the dual, the triple, and the quad panels. You had the 5 by 7s. I was going to show some 5 by 7s, but the way we did this camera, we tested it out and you miss a lot of the cropping on that. So we'll save that for a different episode where we play around a little bit more. But this is a fun Modoc. This is what the backs look like. This is
Paul
Paul
Hill.
Hill, who has,
Yep.
there are at least two or three people I know of who actively collect Paul's work. And
Yep.
it's, not a surprise why. Again, he's another where he has a nice balance of cartoony but really well detailed, and he does great work coloring as well.
Yep.
Um, which there are some artists where um, it's funny. Most of the heavy lifting is done in the coloring as opposed to the inking stage, right?
Yep.
And it just shows what a good colorist can do with a card. Like if you took away the color and just looked at black and white, there's actually not a lot going on there if you can just sort of visualize it in your head, right? There's not a lot of detail there, just some very thin lines. Once you add the colors, you add the different shadings of the colors, right? You got the yellow, the darker, the lighter right there, and the mix. It really just makes the card pop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it was fun too because in his Modoc he put the heart monitor in the middle of the chest, which I just think is so much fun that he put that in there too. This is fun.
yeah.
Good
I
sketch.
actually so it only just opened. I haven't seen Ant Man yet, but I'm definitely looking forward to
Me neither.
seeing. I don't think it's a spoiler at this point since he was in the previews
Yeah.
that MODOK is in the film. So definitely looking forward to that. Um, and I think Warner. I think that's once I do start bringing artists on to talk, I think talking about color theory would be one of those great topics because for a non-artist like me, like I can see it and I know that it works, but I don't really know the thought process behind it and what goes into it. Like we had some Mayo cards, Mayo and Bread on earlier, and I've done a lot of APs with him, and he shows me the previews, and he does something that I have only seen one other person do, but I'm sure lots of people do it, which is to do that initial blocking in red, like Palumbo did. Right? He did a lot of his prelims, in fact, in that sort of dark red.
Yeah.
I was just
It
looking
was like a
because I know I.
monochrome Basically, it's monochrome, and what he's doing is it's red,
Oh,
black, and a little bit of whiting, white in there.
literally,
But yeah,
literally right, and you can
yep,
see that underlying red layer that
yep,
he does. And Mayo does that. He does the entire outline blocked out in red and then fills in all the details. And to me, it's fascinating to see how that red sort of fades and all the other colors sort of move in as they're laid out over it. So
yeah.
a lot of fun there. Um, yeah, maybe one or two more, and we'll wrap it up. We've been going for an hour now. Um, you know what? I'll show that one Star Wars. I'll mix it up because, like I said at the beginning, while a lot of the focus will be Marvel, I do have multiple cards that are out there. So this is an AP I had done. It's a two-card AP by two different artists who did it together, which is Carlos Caballero. I'm horrible with that last name pronunciation.
Hmm.
And Louise Draper, and they each did one half of it, and obviously sent it to the other to finish. And you can see, you can understand why that was. At one point, I had a couple hundred Star Wars sketches, but I thought, what, I'm spreading myself too thin, so I sold them all, and this is the only one that I absolutely had to keep.
It's a killer one you kept. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, they just
Wow,
did an amazing job there. So yeah, I mean,
so good, man.
that's the great thing about sketch cards, right? Like we've just saw. I mean, compare that to Modoc, right? We've gone from a cartoony style to a hyper realistic style. And I think that's part of what's wonderful about this hobby that there's there's room for both in both collections and within sets, I think. And I hope over time somebody at one of these companies will figure this out and help go back to that, because I think as we go back to the older sets, Marvel 75th, all the Rittenhouse in that 2012 to 2015 era, there were a lot more fun cards, right? And again, not that I love this card, right? I am a fan of hyperrealism as well, but I think what I've heard, because I don't follow it anymore because I don't want to be tempted, but Star Wars is almost exclusively realism these days, right? Yeah.
Like
And
it's so exclusively realism that it's also very much like um it's almost like they have to pull stills from the shows, from promotional
right,
material.
it has
Like
to be
it's not,
recreated.
yeah,
Yep.
it can't be totally from the imagination of the artist because it has to be approved by Lucasfilm. And I do think Marvel's going to go that way in the future.
Hopefully,
Um,
hopefully, I think the advantage Marvel has is that there really are two branches with Marvel, right? You've got the comics and you've got the MCU. And the advantage there is the comics came first in Marvel. Whereas in Star Wars, the movies came first and there are comics, but that was an offshoot of the movie. The movie is the primary driver. And I don't think they've ever done any distinction to have a comics only Star Wars set, right? They've only stayed sort of in canon. Um,
yeah, Katie Cook, Warner just mentioned her, and I was thinking about her as well. Katie Cook was someone in Star Wars and who did Marvel cards, where she really went off the path of doing that kind of stuff. And those sketch cards are extremely coveted and important to a lot of collectors. And they're beautiful. You don't see them pop up often at all, at all, at
yeah,
all. And they're gorgeous.
I can think of, I know Nina Edlund did a bunch that are really sought after as well.
That's a good one.
Um, but you're
That's a
right,
good
for
one.
recent ones you just don't see it, which is funny because ultimately Star Wars and Marvel are owned by the same company. So it's hopefully we don't see that level of rigidity continue down that
Yeah.
path.
I think the
So
other one that's getting away with it right now is
oh
Alvarez.
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Novelist. Yep.
Alvarez, and I think he's getting away with it because it is the
Because his
pose
cards
and
are
certain like
mind-blowingly good.
they're just insanely. I have one here, Mando
Yes.
one here,
So let's see that
which
bad boy, because that thing's
you want to see it. I can show it to you. I'll show
right?
it to you.
I got to have the people who are on show at least one sketch card, right? That's you got to show your
That's a good
pedigree.
idea. That's good. That makes me feel a lot better. Let me mute my camera. I'll get it for you.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, for people who are on here, Indiana Jones. I know, God, no, don't say that, Joe. Oh no, I got to share that. Yeah, that's Ryan Waterhouse. Um, Ryan was also famous on the Lord of the Rings sets because he did what were called helmet heads um, in that set that were just the masked ones. It's funny. Over time, he got a lot of grief. But over time, as we've seen what these companies put the artist through, just in terms of the demands, the crappy pay, just all the hassle, I'm not surprised. I'm surprised more people didn't do what he did, which was okay. You got me under contract, and I got to do 1,000 sketch cards, and sketch is not defined. More power to him. He obeyed the letter of the law. It didn't help us as collectors, but I blame the company and not the artist. He did what they asked him to do. Good on him. They should have been far more specific in that situation.
All right.
Excuse me. Oh yeah, no, I've got some of Ryan's ABs from Lord of the Rings. Absolutely breathtaking. Well, I'm sure. Yeah,
Okay.
Warner shared
So,
this. Yeah,
what did Warner share?
that J. Scott Campbell does fun likenesses. No
Yeah,
shock at
yeah.
all there.
I actually have a Star Wars card that's not Mando that I got from our buddy by Adam Hughes, which I still can't believe he did sketch cards and like it's buried, so I have to go looking
Oh,
for it.
yeah.
But I'll share it
Yeah,
on my Instagram.
my one Adam
So
Hughes is a prize for sure.
it's beautiful. They're stunning. Okay, so I'll show some. I'm gonna show some crazy stuff, and you can make
All
my
right.
screen bigger so
Yep,
people
let's
can
do
see
that.
it.
Drag you over. There we go.
But I'm actually going to share two surfer cards because Matt invited me on, and I'm happy to be part of this show's legacy. So I'll show two surfers, two Mandos, and then we'll leave you guys alone.
Oh my God. The problem is even that camera doesn't do it justice.
No,
Like the level of detail Angel is able to put into these cards. Like I was talking earlier that Tony Perna, Lack Lim, you've got these guys who do this crazy level of detail. This blows them away. Like, does this guy
it's
use like a
insanity.
single bristle of a brush? Like, how does he do this?
And then you should see his Grogu's. Like they're so small in the frame, or his droids or something like that. They're awesome. But this was a pack pulled one from the Chrome set, and I needed to get it, so I got
Did
very
you trade
lucky.
for it, or did
I
you
didn't
end up
think I'd
buying it?
own one. What happened?
Did you trade for it, or did you buy it?
I had to buy it. There's
Oh,
I
so sorry.
can't. My Mando collection is like so limited, like the Surfer one, that there's really nothing for trade in there.
Warren is mentioning that
And then this is
Adam's wife, Allison Sohn, did sketch cards. I must have 30 or 40 of hers from Lord of the Rings. Her work is stunning.
oh yeah, it's
My
awesome.
God, look at that. Is that Carlos?
That's Carlos. I think it's Carlos's. From what he told me, I think it's his first helmet removal, but I might be wrong.
So good.
Regardless, I love it. It's such a good pivotal scene too, where like he has to make that choice, and he's sitting there with Mayfield. It's just a good one, and it's pack pulled, which I'm really happy about.
Did he only take off his helmet twice? That
So
scene to say goodbye
it's
to
at the
Grogu?
end of yeah, it's actually season one. He did it at the end as well,
Right,
because he has to get his head repaired by IG,
right.
and then
But just once each
he's
season, right?
no, it's twice in season two because it's the one where he has to take it off to find where Grogu's located, and then the second one in season two is at the end when he says goodbye. But I just love the colors of this a lot, and I love the jacket. I love that he's undercover, and it's just a good one. I like the look. And then my surfer sketches, and it's a shame because I wish I had a Mando sketch that was like ink and kind of rough and stuff like that. But my surfer sketches are more like that because I tend to do only certain artists for surfer. So like here are they, but here's one from MM07,
Oh man,
and I
and that's
just
an
love the
AP,
stylistic
think,
nature of
right?
the sketch. Say again.
That's an AP, right? But I can tell from the coloring of the top.
It's not an AP. It's actually pack bold. So the colors in here is pretty rough, but it's pack bold. Yeah,
Okay.
it's one of the 20 or let me see. Is that right? Is that the right way now, or is that reversed?
Uh, it's reversed, but that's fine. Yeah. I was just looking. The color on the top looked a little more gray. That's all. But I think it's just the lighting.
Yeah, no, it's blue.
Oh yeah, you can tell because it's not orange at the back.
Right. No, it's blue. It's very yellow in here,
I
so it
look
looks a little purple.
him in front of the Galactus is always a classic too. You know.
I just think it's great, especially if you know the artist, which is Eric over here, and just such a good artist, and just does such good renditions and Surfer. And this is his only Surfer for the set of '07. It's just it might not look like a lot to other people, but is actually one of my favorite pieces because it has such a stylistic touch to it, and he is such a famous comic book artist, and I love
Yep.
all the work he does. So it's just a really good piece. And then this is by an artist, a famous comic book artist who passed away, unfortunately. Um,
That's Mike, right? Yeah.
yeah, that's Mike.
Such a good piece. Again, so simple, and that's what I love about that all of them back then, whether it's the Silver Age or the MCC '98, like that one. They the whole less is more in a lot of these cases, right? Just let the work speak for itself without going. You don't have to go into incredible detail. You can get a really great piece um, without going overboard. That's a great example of it.
I don't know. These sketches are just for me though. Like these I don't know. For me, like these two are such important artists to the Star Wars sketch card scene, and they've done work for like what happened. Oh boy.
I'll share you the quote after you're done talking. It's
Oh,
a
that's
it's a good one.
great. Brushing Galactus's teeth.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, yeah, but there you go. Two surfers, two Mandos. That's my contribution.
In four like mind blowing cards right there. Jeez.
Well, you always show me fire, and I wanted to show something on the channel that a lot of people haven't seen probably, or have seen.
One of
But I thought
one
that'd be
of
cool.
the I know an AP I'm going to have to get for beginnings since it'll be allowed, which is Galactus. But again, I don't know how current you are on the comics. There was an example, and it was a few years ago, and I forget the whole storyline, but it's basically Galactus was sort of like our last best hope against some Celestials, and essentially Galactus got killed, and then Franklin Richards resurrects him and makes Galactus his herald, and he says, "Come to me, my Galactus," and that's what I want on a sketch card because that was
That's
just
a
such a
great one.
badass. And
That's
I'm
a
just
great one.
I'm
Isn't there a whole storyline? I don't know if it's Earth X or not, but wasn't there a whole storyline that
might have
Galactus was
been the one.
actually Red Reacher's son as well? Like the identity was him as well. Like there was some kind of mix up there as well. I know, man. I hope someone does like a Silver Surfer Black. I have. I need to get a sketch card by Tradmore. That'd be crazy to figure that out one day. But no, that'd be a great sketch card. I mean, he's coming back, man. People are gonna have a lot of fun. I'm excited to see what everyone does for their APs and stuff.
Yeah. Is this live? It's as live as we can make it. Yep. Marble Madness.
Yep.
Let's see. Just going back to some of the comments. So yeah, one of the questions was that came up, and again, this could be a whole episode too, right? We should just for rejections, stamp them on the back like not approved and send it back to the artist. Um, I agree, but this topic actually came up in, I can't remember if it was MCCW or I think it might have been on a Discord, on Justin's Discord. Whereas I know they can't do that because when they're rejected, there's contractual requirements that say they're supposed to destroy them. However, I can disprove that practice because I have sketch cards that were rejected and destroyed, yet somehow they made it into the market and are in my collection. So yeah, that's a whole nother topic we could get into.
People, I don't think
Yeah,
people realize what they signed up for now. What you're gonna
yeah.
start
Oh
telling
yeah. No,
people.
I know some dirty little secrets for
Oh
sure.
shit, it's scary,
Um,
making me sweat.
yeah. Welcome.
What up,
Thank
Matt?
you for showing up, man. Appreciate it. Um,
If
oh,
Marvel
that
says
would
no,
be a
it
good
kind
one
of
too.
means no. That's funny.
God Emperor Doom ripping out Thanos' spine. That that
That's
would be
sick.
such a good one. But again, now they're moving away from even like the gore and some of the blood. You can't have blood anymore. I mean, just again, I part of me gets it. I know they're Disney. I know they're beholden to stockholders and they can't risk upsetting and getting nasty letters. I get it. It's just as a collector, it's disappointing, you know.
Well, it makes the product bland. When you don't have creativity in sketch cards, the sketch cards become bland. Like they just do. Like I mean, it's very, and it's not the fault of the artist; it's the fault of the curators of the art directors, like you mentioned before. Like you have to have variety. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Again, so many ways we could go with this.
Yellow
So
Galactus, yeah, yeah, Derpa. I think you're right. Yeah,
yeah, so
there
many
was some kind
versions
of
of collecting.
reversal. Yeah, yeah. It's gonna be fun, man. I appreciate you having me on, Matt. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, man.
Yeah, thank you guys all for coming. Women of Marvel would be a bloodbath. Yeah, fine. Good final comment. With a lot of the rules on what you can and can't show, I can only imagine the level of rejections. So yeah, as long as it isn't in their contracts that they're not allowed to discuss it, I will definitely bring some artists on to talk about what's going on with that. Um, and just a couple final comments. Going to see Ant-Man tomorrow. Yeah, I'm trying to get there tomorrow as well. My kids don't want to go. I'm like, you want to go? Like, oh, I don't know. If it's not a 2 minute video on YouTube, they don't want to see it. So definitely going to try and get there. And yeah, yeah, no, that is a good point. You're right. The cards these days are not geared at kids. So, but yeah, welcome to corporate. So, anyways, folks, so thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Oh man, thank you
For
for
the
having me
people,
on, dude. I appreciate this. It's always a pleasure.
this was fun, yeah. And as again, this was sort of me getting my feet wet and sort of figuring out what works, whether by set, what doesn't work, and really ripping that band-aid. Sometimes doing the first episode and now committing myself to doing more of them is important. So I'm glad we did this. Thank you to the people who showed up as well. Get a haircut. I will get absolutely. I think he's talking to you because I don't barely have any hair, so I'm going to
No,
guess
he's
that's
talking to
no.
me.
There you
Yeah,
go.
he's talking to me.
Awesome. So yeah, thanks everybody,
Tuesday.
and I will see you on. I will see you on the next show. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for
I'll
having me,
come up
Matt.
with
Bye,
I'll
everybody.
come up with a sketchy tagline as well. So, but for now, just thanks.
Bye, everybody.